In a quiet and serene village, nestled at the foot of a great mountain, there lived a revered seer named Rishi Daksha. His wisdom and insight were known far and wide, and people from distant lands came to him, seeking answers to the deepest questions of life. Rishi Daksha was known for his ability to perceive not just the physical world, but also the hidden truths of existence. He would often meditate by the riverbank, contemplating the nature of the universe, the self, and the divine. One day, a young seeker named Arjuna arrived at the sage's hermitage. Arjuna was an earnest disciple, eager to gain knowledge of the truth, but he struggled with the question of the divine. He had heard that the divine existed in all things, but he could not grasp how this could be true. To him, the divine seemed distant, separate from the world around him. He approached Rishi Daksha with great reverence and said, "Master, I have heard that the divine pervades all of existence. It is in everything, in all beings. But I cannot see it. How can the divine be in the trees, in the animals, in the rivers, and even in the people around me? How can I recognize the divine in the ordinary world?" The sage, seeing the young man's confusion, smiled gently and invited him to sit. "Arjuna," he said, "the divine is not something separate from the world. It is not an entity that resides only in temples or sacred places. It is present everywhere, in everything you see and experience. But you must learn to look beyond the surface, to see with the eyes of wisdom. You must realize that the seer and the seen are one." Arjuna was puzzled. The seer and the seen are one? But how can that be? I am the seer, and the world around me is the seen. How can they be the same? Rishi Daksha nodded, understanding the young man's confusion. He stood up and motioned for Arjuna to follow him. They walked together through the village, past the bustling market, and into the nearby forest. As they walked, Rishi Daksha pointed to various objects along the way, the trees, the birds, the flowers, the flowing river, and asked Arjuna to look closely at them. "What do you see, Arjuna?" he asked. Arjuna answered, "I see the trees, the birds flying in the sky, the flowers blooming, and the river flowing. These are all separate things, different from one another." The sage smiled and said, "Yes, you see them as separate, but in reality, they are all connected. The tree is not different from the soil, the bird is not separate from the air, the flower is not distinct from the sun's light. All these things exist because of an underlying unity, and that unity is the divine presence that pervades everything." Arjuna was still struggling to understand. "But I am separate from all these things. How can I be one with them?" Rishi Daksha led Arjuna to the edge of the river, where the water flowed gently over the rocks. He pointed to the water and said, "Arjuna, look at the river. You can see the water flowing, can you not?" Arjuna nodded. "Yes, I can see the water flowing." "Now," said the sage, "imagine that the river is the world. The water flowing represents all the experiences you have, the things you see, the people you meet, the thoughts you think. You are standing by the river, watching it flow. But you are also part of the river. The water that you see is the same water that flows through you. You cannot separate yourself from the river, for you are part of it, just as the river is part of you." Arjuna gazed at the river, his mind beginning to open to the sage's teachings. "I see now," he said, his voice filled with realization. "The river and I are not separate. The water is in the river, and the river is in the water. And just as the river flows through me, so too does the divine flow through all of existence." Rishi Daksha smiled, pleased with the young seeker's insight. "Yes, Arjuna, the seer and the seen are one. You, the one who perceives, and the world around you, the object of perception, are not separate. The divine is in the seer, and the divine is in the seen. To recognize this is to see with the eyes of wisdom, to see that the world is not just a collection of separate things, but a unified whole, imbued with the divine presence." Arjuna's heart was filled with a sense of peace and understanding. For the first time, he saw the truth of the sage's words. He realized that the divine was not distant, not separate, but present in every leaf, every breath, every moment of his life. He no longer saw the world as a collection of separate things, but as a vast and interconnected whole, with the divine as its essence. "Master," he said, his voice trembling with reverence, "I now understand. The divine is not something outside of me, but within me, within everything around me. I see that the seer and the seen are not separate, but one and the same. Thank you for showing me this truth." Rishi Daksha nodded, his eyes filled with compassion. "You have taken the first step on the path of realization, Arjuna. Remember always that the divine is in everything, the trees, the animals, the people, and the very air you breathe. To see the world in this way is to see the divine in all things, and to know that the divine is never far from you, for it is in your own heart." From that day forward, Arjuna moved through the world with new eyes. He saw the divine in every person he met, in every tree he passed, and in every breath he took. The separation between the seer and the seen disappeared, and he realized that in seeing the world through the lens of unity, he was truly seeing the divine.